Hi everyone. Hi guys. Right, so let me share this. Okay, guys. So, all right. So please don't forget that your cameras need to be on. Make sure that you turn them on as we go. Okay. So today we'll be looking at task 4 of the speaking section. So remember that in the speaking section, we got 4 tasks. The first one was the independent one, which meant that it was just about your opinion on something. And the other ones were integrated tasks. So this one here that we're looking at, it's an integrated one, which means that you do have to do something before you get to answer the question. So we'll be seeing how that works. Now, this one is an academic one, which means that it's going to be on some academic topics. You may find some new vocabulary, but it should be fine. So what you will have to do for this one is, well, basically, you will listen to a lecture. So if you guys remember what a lecture was, it's just a college class. It's a professor, a college professor explaining a topic. So you will have to listen to this lecture, which lasts like 2 or 3 minutes usually, and then you're done. Then you get the question, which will always be the same, using the points and examples from the lecture, explain, and whatever the topic was. As for time goes, you will have the exact same timing that you had for the other one. So 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to finally speak and answer the question. Okay, so you listen to the lecture, it's an academic lecture, you get the question, you get 30 seconds to prepare and 1 minute to speak. So is everything okay so far? Do you guys have any questions on the structure?
Are we allowed to take notes in this part?
Yes, good question. Yes, you are allowed to do so. Actually, you kind of have to, because it's quite hard to remember all the information you got in there. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So let's look at okay, where am I? All right, so now the topics that you may find are actually the same for the past 3, but I'm gonna repeat. So you have one of these 3 options: psychology, biology, or business. Of course, you don't get to choose. It's completely random, but these are the most common topics that you can find: psychology, biology, or business. So, at least for me, I would say is the easiest one. It's usually about how our brain works, how our memory works, how we experience certain things, how we process, respond to emotions, to experiences, how we learn, how we interact with each other. Biology tends to be about animals and plants, usually not humans. And it's about how they relate to each other, their life processes, relationships. Adaptations is something that I've seen a lot. So how these animals adapt to certain changes. And finally, business is usually on, something about finance, marketing, advertising techniques, strategies to persuade customers or something, usually around those lines. Now, I don't think this is going to be the case for you guys. It's really rare to find one of these topics like art or history or literature, or sociology. It's quite rare. I wouldn't really say you would find one of those. But in case you do, I think we can practice with them as well. But usually psychology, biology, or business are the ones that appear the most. Okay, so any questions about that before we move on? Okay. Now about the structure of the lecture. So here is where it gets different from the other ones, and this is the most important thing I'd say to understand how it's going to be structured. So at the beginning, like a normal college class, the professor will introduce the topic. So you would have a short, sometimes not so short introduction to the topic. So it'll be something like, hey class, today we'll be looking at this thing and this other thing. And then you can have different things. So you could have a short explanation on what the topic is. Maybe sometimes you have some examples in there. So different things. You will have that introduction for like 30 seconds, sometimes 1 minute, sometimes it gets longer. So for example, let's say that the topic is on pollution. So it could be, hey class, we're going to be looking at pollution. And maybe you have a definition of what pollution is. So pollution is when this and this and this happen to the environment, blah, blah, blah. So the biggest thing I could say to you here is don't overstress about the introduction. Don't worry too much. You don't even have to take so many notes from the intro. I wouldn't even take notes from the introduction because it's not going to be important, as important as the rest. So I would just try to, while the introduction is going on, just listen to it, make sure that I get the general idea, the bigger picture, what the lecture will be about, so that I just get what it is about, you know? I wouldn't worry too much about any explanation that you would have in there, because to be honest, you're not going to use your response. So just make sure that you get the general idea. Now, what's important is what comes next. So the professor will basically break down that topic into 2 subtopics. So I don't know what that's going to be. Maybe if you're talking about pollution, you can have something like 2 causes of pollution, or 2 effects of pollution, or 2 definitions of pollution, or 2 ways to solve it. I don't know. Okay, but you will always have 2 of them, 2 subtopics, no matter what. So that's important. Sometimes you will have these very specific terms, like maybe water contamination. I don't know, really, but something like that, a very specific term. And here you may find a definition, a short one. So water contamination occurs in these and these and these happens. Okay, that is important, and you do have to take notes on that. And then finally, you will have some more specific details, some examples or something. So maybe you have the name of a river, or the case of a lake, or how the history of this ocean, I don't know. Okay, so you will have something a bit more specific. It will always go like that, from bigger to smaller. First, the introduction, the general idea, then the first subtopic, its definition, and then the example. And then the same one applies for the second one. You get a second subtopic, maybe air pollution, and then you got some examples, I don't know, about some gases or something, and that's it. So it will always be like this. Remember that this is the most important part, is the 2 subtopics and the 2 examples, okay? So any questions about that?
No.
Okay. And finally, well, you're just, I mean, what you need to do is basically what I just said, identify what those topics are and what those examples are. If you have any definitions here, try to catch them as well. And I'm going to give you one tip here. So most of the time, the question is quite important. So you actually have some hints in the question. So just the only thing I could say is just make sure that you read the question, that you pay attention to it. Don't just, you know, be so focused on your notes on something that you let it go away. So just read the question. Sometimes the topic will be there. So instead of this, because this introduction will be quite long, so you will have like a good summary in the question. Sometimes they also include something about the 2 subtopics or the 2 examples. So believe me, it's really useful to read the question, and you can even use that for your intro. So it is quite useful. We're going to see that with some examples. And some other tips before we move on to the example would be, in your response, you're going to be asked to summarize everything. So when you do that, you need to remember that you're just reporting what the professor has said. So you need to act like a reporter. like a reporter, sorry. So you're gonna, I don't know, if the professor says, so pollution is when, or air contamination happens when the air is polluted, then instead of you saying the same thing, you need to say, according to the professor, air pollution occurs, blah, blah, blah. Or the professor states that air pollution, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Or the professor claims or argues or defines pollution as, okay? I'm not saying you should use them for every single idea that you have, but at least 2 or 3 reporting verbs in your response would be great. In a template, you will see that we have some, so with that, that's enough. When you're listening to the lecture, you will find these transition words, which are really helpful. So, for example, the professor may say something like, okay, so to start, let's look at this subtopic, which is defined as this. For example, take this river, or take this as an example. Okay, so pay attention to those transitions. They will give you, those are like red flags that you can use to guide yourself, to see how it's structured. The truth is, you just have 1 minute to speak, and the lecture is about 2 or 3 minutes long. So you're gonna have to leave some things behind. Don't worry too much. It's impossible to make space for everything. Even if you speak like super fast, you're not gonna make time to mention everything. So you're gonna have to leave some things behind. You just gotta learn to differentiate what's important and what's not so important. The relevant information will be the one that matters. So you will see how many sentences you should even give for each part. Okay, so if you have tons of details, and if you include 1 or 2, that's fine, And finally, the way you speak, try to articulate the words, try to make it clear for the listener. Remember that an e-rater is going to be first evaluating your score, and later a human rater is going to be there. So they're going to be looking for those transitions. If it's the easier for the listener to understand your response, the better for you. So just try to articulate the words, speak clearly, speak calmly. You don't have to do it so fast. Just take your easy and speak with enthusiasm, like you cared about the topic, like you were actually passionate about it. Is that okay with you guys? Any questions by now? Okay, so now it's gonna get interesting because we're gonna be looking at the first example. So make sure that you have a piece of paper then and a pen to take some notes. You know what you're looking for, right? Try to organize your notes in this way. So first, the general idea, the topic, then the 2 subtopics and their 2 details, okay? So let's hear it. Okay, hold on. All right, so here you go.
Listen to part of a lecture in a business class.
If a consumer has to choose between 2 products, what determines the choice? Assume that someone, a purchaser, is choosing between 2 products that cost the same, okay? If people have a choice between 2 identically priced products, which one will they choose? They choose the one they think is of higher quality, of course. But what does it mean for a product to be a high-quality product? Well, business analysts usually speak of 2 major factors of quality. One factor is reliability, and the other is what we call features. So reliability. What's reliability? Well, a product is reliable if it works the way we expect it to work, if it can go a reasonable amount of time without needing repairs. If a product, a car for example, doesn't work the way it should and needs repairs too soon, we say it's unreliable. So product reliability means basically the absence of defects or problems that you weren't expecting. It used to be that when people thought about product quality, they thought mainly about reliability. Today, it's different. People do still care about reliability, don't get me wrong. It's just that manufacturing standards are now so high that, we'll take cars, for example, today. Today's cars are very reliable. So reliability is important, but it's not going to be the deciding factor. So if reliability isn't the deciding factor anymore, what is? Features, all those extras, the things a product has that aren't really necessary, but that make it easier to use or that make it cool. For example, new cars today are loaded with features like electric windows, sunroofs, air conditioning, stereos, and so forth. When people are comparing products today, they look at features because reliability is pretty much equal across the board. And that's why manufacturers include so many features in their products.
Using points and examples from the lecture, explain the two major factors of product quality and how their role in consumer decision-making has changed.
Okay. So that was the lecture. What do you think of it? Any comments?
It was faster than I thought it would be.
Was it? Okay. But was it understandable? Okay, great. So, okay, so now I'm going to ask you a few questions about what it was about. So the first thing, what was the general idea, the general topic? What was the lecture about?
What determines the elections of the consumers?
I'm sorry, come again, please.
What determines the consumers' elections?
Okay, yes, I got you. All right, so what determines the consumer's decisions, right?
Yeah, decisions.
Okay, nice. All right, and I also like your vocabulary. Remember, it's part of the rubric, you know, not just vocabulary, which means not repeating over and over again the same words, but also word choice. So using the appropriate words whenever you need them, you know? So it's completely different to say, so how a consumer, okay, if I say how people choose things, than if I say how consumers choose products, right? So having an appropriate word choice will help. And the good thing is that you do know what the topics are, right? So you could check out some business words, biology words sometimes. Psychology is a bit hard, but you will see that the vocabulary is pretty much the same that we use in casual conversation, so it's easy in that sense. Okay, by the way, for
Miss,
sorry?
I have a question, please. I understood the topic is about the product quality, and the question is about what the decision to the customers about that.
Okay, so I think what you're saying is true, but both of the ideas that you're mentioning are related because what we have here, right? So how a consumer makes their decisions. And that is determined by quality. Now, what makes up quality? So what are the factors that make us think that a product is a high quality product? And that's what the professor explains with the two subtopics. You know what I mean? So basically, quality is what consumers are looking at. So that's what makes them choose a certain product. Now, what's quality? So quality is influenced by two other factors, and that's what we have. Is it okay? Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. So by the way, for those of you guys that joined the course, I'm going to send you a list of words that may help you. And these are words that will be useful for the speaking section in general and the writing too. So of course you can fill out complete this. It's not super complete. There are some, I don't know, many words that you could add, but it's about the topics that you will find in the speaking section. And it's good to have some vocabulary about that. Okay, so I already sent the link to the chat, by the way. Okay, but let's continue. Where am I? Okay, so, all right, so we're saying what determines the consumer's decisions. Anything else you guys would like to add? Oh my gosh, what did I do? Okay, hold on, please. I'm so sorry. I accidentally. Okay, so here we are. Okay, so I was saying, would you like to add something to the topic?
I think also in the lecture they say that what determines, but when if the product costs the same, our identity and have the same quality, the same high quality, I think.
Okay. All right. So yes, if two products have the same price, the same quality, so what determines the consumer's decisions? Okay. All right, guys. Okay. So now, what was the first subtopic? What was that first thing we saw? Anyone?
Liability.
Yes.
The quality product.
Okay. No. Nathaniel?
Business
So
business
the reliability of a product and how it affects the decision of the customers.
Okay, great. So you guys agree, reliability? Is that okay? Yes, Freddie?
Yes, I wanted to say the same as Nathaniel because of the introduction part. The lecturer talked about reliability and features, and the first part was about reliability.
Okay, great. So you already got the second one as well. Features, reliability and features. Those were the two topics. So as you can see, guys, those are very specific terms. Okay, thank you, Freddie. And they are very key words that you do need to remember, you need to catch, and you need to repeat in your response. Now, do we have any definitions for reliability? What is it?
A product that is absent of defects.
Okay, the absence of defects. Great. Anything else? Freddie?
The product works as expected.
Okay, when it works as expected. All right. Anything else?
Probably, I don't know, probably you say like a more safe in the case of cars. I understand more safe to drive.
Okay, so yes, they are, yeah, I mean, it has to do with safety. So we could say safer. I don't know if that's the word that the professor uses. We can try and use. Okay. All right then, guys. So now what about the details? So how does the professor illustrate the reliability concept? So, I mean, what example does he give?
Well, the professor says that even though people still care about reliability, nowadays it's like the market is so competitive that it isn't like a definitive quality of a product when it comes to choosing a product. So it's not defining.
not defined.
Okay, great. Awesome, guys. I like that vocabulary as well. So yes, market is so competitive right now. I think every product has the same, I mean, all products are reliable, we could say. So it's not the defining factor anymore. Okay, nice. But what about the example? So there's a specific example the professor gives.
The professor uses a car as example.
Great, cars. So what about them? What about cars?
If you bought a car and it's functioning like it should be, that's reliable. But if you need to change, I don't know, the battery or something in the car, it's unreliable.
Okay. All right, that's perfect. So yes, if you need to take it to the mechanics, do some repairs, and it's a reliable car. But if it works the way you expect it to work, it's a reliable one. All right. And finally, what about features? What are features?
They are the correct characteristics that make products different from each other.
Okay. What else? Anything else? Okay. So yes, that's correct. There are these maybe extra characteristics that make them different, that make them maybe.
Excuse me, something like details in the products or
Something
specific details in products.
specific. What again? Sorry.
Details?
Videos?
No, details.
Okay, okay. So yeah, very specific details. Okay, that's true. So characteristics or details. All right. I don't know what's wrong with this. Okay. And yes, and they're not really necessary, are they? They're more like extra additional, make them cool, make them appealing, but not necessary. And what about the details? So what was the example that we had here?
The cars have sunroof, have full equipment.
Okay. What else? Anything else?
Yes, he said that because of the high reliability of cars, people now don't care about it, and they try to look for the future. So they now choose everything that personalize their car.
Okay, yes, because reliability is the same, they focus on features now. And we have some examples like the sunroof. I think you got something about electric windows, air conditioning. So it's okay. If you got different, I mean, a number of examples, if you mention one of them or two, that's fine. Okay, guys. So anything else anybody would like to add here to this, notes or brainstorming we got? All right. So in your response, you would have to do, just what the professor did in the same order, in this order. So you're just gonna have to go and explain what you have here. Now, of course, as we were saying, if you got different definitions, just go with one or two, maybe. Okay, let's try and go part by part. So at the beginning, you need a short introduction. And in your intro, you're just gonna explain what the general topic is. So the general idea of the lecture, what the lecture was about. So you can go with something like the lecture's about, or the professor discusses. I like both terms. Now, whenever I give you templates, guys, you're welcome. You can change them as you like, change the words. You can say first instead of to start, or moreover instead of then, I don't know. You can change them. Just try and keep the structure of it, because that's the usual structure. It's easier to organize it this way. Try not to go first with the second subtopic, then with the intro, or then a conclusion. Just try and keep the structure of it. Okay. So at the beginning, you just tell me what the general idea is. So the lecture is about consumer decision making is something that the question said. I don't know if you guys remember that part, but in the question, the professor was like, explain consumer decision making. So that's a really good way of summarizing everything we had for the topic in the introduction, right? So that's why I said pay attention to the question. So you could say something like, the lecture is about product quality and consumer decision making, and that's it. I really wouldn't go that far here. You don't have that much time. You want to make the intro in just like 10 seconds, I would say. Now, here's a transition that sounds fancy and sounds good, but to be honest, it takes some time. So it's going to depend on how much time you have or on how good you are with time. Usually, I would say just skip this part. And instead of, because this will be like introducing the relationship that the topic has with the subtopics. So for example, in this case, reliability and features are two factors that determine the consumer's decisions, right? So that's the relationship that they have. So you could say after introducing the topic, the professor features two factors that make up quality or that determines or influences a consumer's decision. So you can do this or you can skip it. It's like optional. It depends on how you're doing with time. If you're running out of time constantly, then try not to use it. It's not that important, it's just something extra. So if you don't do it, you can just say it here. So the lecture is about consumer decision-making and the two factors that make up quality. And that's it, that's your introduction, okay? Less than 10 seconds. And then you move on as quickly as possible to the subtopics. So you start with the first one, try and use transitions. Remember the e-raters are specifically designed for looking for those. So they help you with structure, they help you with vocabulary, they help you with even, you know, the speaking itself, it makes you like mark pauses and everything. So you can say to start or first or to begin with, use your reporting verbs. So if it's a she, now sometimes some people get confused with these pronouns because sometimes it's a female professor, sometimes it's a male professor. So one way to avoid making those mistakes is just saying the lecturer and the professor, which is fine. Or if you want, you can just use a pronoun. So to start, I think it was a he in this case, right? So he describes reliability, which is the absence of defects or when a product works the way it's supposed to, blah, blah, blah. And then you go with the example. For instance, cars are now said to be reliable nowadays. And when it doesn't need repairs too soon, when it works a reasonable amount of time, then it's a reliable car. And then you move on to the next one. So then the lecturer describes features as these extra characteristics that a product has that are not necessary, but that make them appealing. So to illustrate, he mentions how manufacturers now add this sunroof or air conditioning, what have you. Okay, guys? So that's the way you need to structure it. It's, if you realize, it's the same one the professor uses, so just keep the same as you have there. So I don't know if this is okay, guys. Any questions about the template, the response?
Andrea, what do you say about he, she describes about if we don't know what's the gender of the professor?
I mean, you
didn't
usually
hear that.
Okay, so you usually will know what the gender is because of their voice, but in case, because I personally seen some people struggle with pronouns, so when they speak, they're like, okay, is it she or he, or sometimes they get mixed up with that. So in general, if you wanna, I mean, if you think you usually make these kind of mistakes with pronouns, you can just say the professor, which is no gender, right? The lecturer. So that's something you can do. The same will go for the other speaking tasks. So for example, in biology, that's something that I've seen too. So I'm telling you about some mistakes that I've seen. So for example, we have biology and you have examples of animals. If we got time, we can do one. So people get, I don't know, people sometimes tend to get mixed up with the pronouns with animals. So it's hard to say it, you know, because even in casual speaking, you use he or she for animals sometimes, you know, depending on the gender. But in this case, it would be better if you just put everything in plural and you use they. So animals, or I don't know, this animal, so they do this and they work in that way and their wings move this way, I don't know. Okay, so it's better to avoid those kind of mistakes. Okay, guys. So, all right. So is there anyone who would like to put everything together and come up with this response? We already have this one. Anyone wants to try? By any chance? Yes, Nathaniel. We can go with you.
I'll try to do this.
Okay, so you can start now.
Okay, thank you. The professor discusses and does a close-up on what determines customer choices between two similar products.
I'm sorry, I think your mic is off.
Sorry, I didn't notice it. Can I start?
Okay.
Can I
Sure.
start again?
Start again, please.
Okay, sorry, thank you. Okay. The professor discusses and does a close-up on what determines customers' choices between two similar products. As he gets deeper into the topic, we can identify two main factors that influence these choices. First, there is reliability. He defines reliability as the ability of a product to work as it should be. But this isn't a defining factor on the choice of the customer. Then he mentions features. Features are characteristics or details that make products unique from others. The main example presented in both of these cases of quality are modern cars. In the lecture, it mentions how cars can have different features and same on reliability. Thanks.
Okay, nice. All right, well done, perfect. I like that it was different. I used your own words, your own language. It was academic, you used transitions, you made it in time, and you mentioned all the relevant information. It was summarized. You had like one short sentence describing the definition of each one of them. So well done. No grammar mistakes, I noticed. So I noticed how you decided to mention both examples at the end, which is something that you could for sure do. However, careful with that, because sometimes you will have these longer lectures, and it may be hard to make it on time. So if you explain both of them and you run out of time, you end up running out of time, then you're not gonna mention what the examples were, and that may hurt your score a bit. Otherwise, if you do mention your example here and then you run out of time and you don't have time to mention the second one, or maybe the example for the second one, then it will be better for your score because you're going to notice that it was something that, okay, you ran out of time. But if you just mention what they are and then the examples and you don't make them in time, then it could be a problem. That's why, maybe you will consider that. But well done. So I like your template personally. And I don't know, I really have nothing to say about that. Well done.
Thanks.
Okay, guys. So any questions now? Yes, Nathaniel?
Sorry,
Okay. And Freddie? I'm sorry, your mic's off. I cannot hear you, Freddie. I think your mic is not on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can now.
Sorry. My question was, what can we do if, for example, we are not familiarized with the topic that the lecturer is teaching? You said at the beginning that there are some topics, for example, psychology, that in my case, I'm not familiarized, so I couldn't catch the idea. What can we do in these cases? Any advice to us?
Okay, so the truth is, you know what the topics are, but it would be hard to kind of go over, psychology is such a broad area, so you're not supposed to know that about the topic. Everything that you need to say in your response is supposed to be in the lecture. So you're not allowed to, even if you know something, if it's about psychology and you know the topic, you cannot explain it the way that you want or the way that you know. You need to do it the way that the professor did. So just use the information that you have in the lecture. However, there are some things you could do. Like one of them is check out some vocabulary, like the one that I was telling you about. So for example, for business, it's way better if you know some words like consumers or customers or product or reliability or I don't know, what have you. There are many like goods or shares, something about finance maybe. But the truth is about the topics itself, it will be hard to learn them like beforehand. So it's not an option. You just need to try to understand what the professor is trying to say. And to be honest, for example, with psychology, it's quite easy because the vocabulary they use, you will see, we're going to do an example now, is pretty basic. You will not really see anything new. Maybe some words like bias or something, like maybe words related to experiments that sometimes you have or things like that. But usually you won't have anything new. Biology, the same, it's mostly about animals and plants. In business, as we were saying, maybe some vocabulary will help. But I think that's the only thing you can actually do, and obviously practice, which will help you catch the ideas better. And another thing that may help is reading, reading or listening to maybe TED Talks or some articles about psychology topics, things like that, and practicing taking notes maybe. So become familiarized with the overall area, but the truth is you won't know what it will be about. So you just need to pay attention to what the professor says and try to take some good notes.
Yes, actually, this is my worry. What if I found one word that I don't understand? So I will be.
Yeah, that may happen. There may be some words you don't know, but you can learn in my context, and you need to, think about it. So, for example, if you don't know the word reliability, you're gonna know by context that it's the subtopic because the professor will be like, okay, so the first factor is reliability. So you have no idea what that word is. What I would try to do is just take notes on it. So I would write it however I want, like maybe, I don't know, reliability, something like this, and just repeat that in your response because I know that it's an important word that I need to repeat. Like reliability and features are the only two ones that you need to make sure you have in your response. But all the other words, you can change them, you can paraphrase them. So just make sure that you get the idea and then you can explain it in your own words. You don't have to really use the same words that the professor's using, just these ones, reliability and features, But in general, you could find other ways. So if you don't know a word, you will know by context, and you can still catch the general idea. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So now let's do one. It's gonna be one on psychology. I'm gonna play the audio. Please take some notes. Here it goes. Okay.
And 60 seconds to speak. Now listen to part of a lecture in a psychology class.
When people are in difficult situations, sometimes they experience feelings of helplessness or psychological pain. So what do? They unconsciously use strategies called defense mechanisms to protect themselves psychologically from their painful emotions. Let's say a woman has a pet dog. She's had this dog for a long time, and he's kept her company and guarded her for years. But one day he runs away. This woman looks everywhere and asks other people if they've seen her dog, but she just can't find him. Now, she feels helpless and sad because she misses her dog, so she'll unconsciously find ways to deal with her painful feelings. One defense mechanism she might use is fantasy. With fantasy, the woman uses her imagination. So instead of just feeling helpless and sad about her lost dog, she invents a happy story in her mind. She might imagine that a nice family found him and feeds him, and that he's really happy with them. She'll picture the dog playing, running around, having fun. Because of this fantasy, she doesn't have to feel sad about her dog running away. It's a fantasy. It's not real, but it keeps her pain away. Another defense mechanism she might use is what we call sublimation. Sublimation is different from fantasy because sublimation isn't about pretending. It's about turning negative emotions into something useful, practical. So the woman might start a dog training school. That way, by training dogs, perhaps she can help prevent other people's dogs from running away like hers did. In other words, with sublimation as a defense mechanism, the woman redirects her negative feelings about losing her dog into a positive, constructive activity.
Okay. Now the question is, using points and examples from the talk, describe the two defense mechanisms mentioned by the professor. So using points and examples from the talk, describe the two defense mechanisms mentioned by the professor. So now you guys will have 30 seconds to prepare your responses, and then we'll see who goes. So you can prepare now. Okay. Okay, guys. So anybody would like to give it a shot? Okay. Maybe we can try with, I don't know. Anna, what about you?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, can you try? You want to go first?
Yes.
Okay. So please, you may go ahead.
Okay. The topic is about the psychology. They gives an example of a woman when she loses her dogs. She has two defense mechanisms. Is the sublimation and I don't remember the other. That's I don't remember the other, teacher. Sorry.
Okay, but go with what you have. Okay, guys. So whenever you don't catch one part, you don't remember, you didn't take notes, you need to improvise. Okay, that's something else that you need to learn here. So sometimes that will happen, and that might happen in your test. So if you don't know one part, just go with what you know. In case it was blurry, you didn't understand, or something happened to the audio, I don't know. So just tell me what you got, what you understood with what the things that you were able to catch from that lecture. Okay, improvise with what you do. So anybody else would like to go? Okay, Nathaniel.
Okay, I'm gonna try this one too.
Okay, so you can go ahead.
Okay. Well, the lecture mentions two main defense mechanisms. The first is fantasy. Fantasy consists in using your imagination or the imagination to invent a happy story. For example, if a woman that has a dog and the dog runs away, this woman can use imagination to invent a happy story about the dog, like the dog is happy now with a new family or anything like that. So it's not real, but it works. And the other defense mechanism is sublimation. Sublimation is turning negative emotions into useful things. Like in the same example, the woman could use this negative emotion to open and train some dogs to not have the same problem again.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I love how you're managing your time. I like that your intro was short. So the lecture was about or is about defense mechanisms. So you got two of them. And they used to go with the first one, the second one. I like that you summarize the second example to make it in time. So at the beginning you said, explain the context, right? So it's about a woman that loses her dog and she wants to deal with the pain. So what does she do? Well, she could use fantasy or this one. And here you just said, well, with the same example. So great, that's something you guys can do when you have the same one. Or something else you could do is at the beginning, you know, the lecture's about defense mechanisms. And you could say, the professor provides the example of a woman that loses her dog in order to illustrate this better. And so you don't have to mention them again. You know, here you're just gonna say, so for instance, the woman might make up a happy story, like the dog has found a family and is happy. And then the same one here. So well done. I really have nothing to say. Maybe careful with the structure. I would try to keep with the transitions, you know, so instead of saying first and the other one is, try and say first or furthermore, moreover, try and use them. The same one here, you know. So yeah, maybe just that. Nothing else to say. Okay, guys. Anybody else would like to try this one before we go? Come on, guys. Yes, Freddie. All right. So you may get started now.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you. Yeah. Okay.
The lecture is about defense mechanism. At the beginning, the professor talks about two mechanisms that are fantasy and sublimation. The fantasy is when people imagine something that makes that person happy. For example, the lecturer talked about a girl that loses her dog and try to imagine happy moments to cover the loss. Regarding sublimation, the lecturer said that people used to turn the negative emotion to a practical or a positive feeling. The example that he provided, there was a person that used the negative emotion to help other people to group emotions, feelings. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So honestly, I didn't get to hear the whole thing. I think you were a bit low and it was kind of cutting off, but I did get to hear like most of it. So, all right, great. So you did make it on time. You kept the structure, maybe careful, you know, timing. So at the beginning, one tip, you don't have to like pre-mention what the topics are because that may take some time. So the professor talks about two defense mechanisms that are fantasy. You can just keep that part and go right off. So to start, fantasy happens or is like this, okay? Also, if you mention what the example was here, and if it's the same one, you can kind of summarize the second one to save time. And yeah, but well done. As you can see, there aren't that many words, you know, or new words when you have psychology. It's kind of the same ones. So it's usually business, sometimes biology. We didn't have time to do one biology one, but you will be practicing tomorrow with just money. So you will have some practice there. I hope you find some practice on biology. So, okay, guys, is everything okay? Do you maybe have any questions or any comments about what we've seen today?
Sorry, I didn't hear the first minute about
Excuse
the.
me. I don't understood.
Sorry?
You heard me?
Yes, kind of.
Yeah, I don't know. I understand. So what's the second word who explains for the audio? The first,
Sublimation.
excuse me?
Sublimation, the second one here.
Yes. Can you write this?
Sure. Sublimation.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, and yes, somebody else was saying something.
Yeah, me, Andrea. I was asking if we have 1 minute for this lecture.
Yes,
I didn't hear the first part of the class. I was late.
Oh, okay. So yes, you get 30 seconds to prepare your response and then 60 seconds to speak, or 1 minute to speak.
Okay. I got it. Thank you. And you're going to send us this presentation?
Yes, of course, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, guys.
Perfect.
Any other question?
It's pretty clear. Thank you, Jane.
I'm sorry? Come again?
Just saying that it is pretty clear. Thank you.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, thanks. Okay. Thanks, Flavia. So,
I'm gonna be leaving because I have another class. So
oh, yes. Before you leave though, guys, would you please fill out the daily survey and then you can leave. And I'll see you guys next class on Thursday.
Okay, see you, Andrea.
Bye-bye, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
teacher. Good night.
Thanks.
Bye, thanks. You too.
Teacher, goodbye.
Bye-bye.